They laughed right in my face when I warned about the storm drains. HOA president, Bryneth Caldwell Morrison, dripping in designer labels, sneered,
"Garrett's dramatic again. Fine him $300 for spreading panic."
I begged for months.
Fix the drains now, or the next big storm will destroy this neighborhood.
They mocked me, ignored me, fined me. Then the storm hit. 6 months later, I'm standing bone dry in my driveway, coffee in hand, watching the aftermath. That acrid smell of backed up water fills the morning air. Neighbors rushing around with shop vacs and tears in their eyes. Me, completely untouched. Not a drop in my basement. They ignored the one neighbor who actually understood drainage systems. Now they're about to learn a very expensive lesson about respecting engineering warnings. What's the worst HOA move you've seen? Drop your craziest story below. I read everyone. Here's how ignoring an engineer destroys your HOA, but let me back up. This disaster didn't happen overnight. 8 months ago, I moved to Pinehurst Meadows for a fresh start. I'm Garrett Thorne, 48, municipal drainage engineer who just buried his wife Sarah after her cancer battle. Needed somewhere quiet to heal. Pinehurst seemed perfect. 67 homes, built 2018, pristine lawns screaming, "We've made it." My modest colonial looked like the neighborhood charity case next to these McMansions, but whatever. Peace and quiet, that's all I wanted. HOA dues, $385 monthly for premium community standards. Red flag number 1. Here's the thing about engineers. We notice shit. Like how the grass squelched underfoot near storm drains. How sump pumps hummed constantly through thin walls after light rain. How that musty basement smell mixed with overpriced mulch created this weird neighborhood funk. The developer, Sunset Vista Construction, had clearly butchered the drainage to squeeze in extra lots. I could see it jogging, wrong slopes, tiny pipes, puddles sitting in gutters 2 days after rain. Textbook overwhelmed system. Then I met our fearless leader, Bryneth Caldwell Morrison. Yes, hyphenated. Platinum blonde, designer everything, white BMW X5 that costs more than most people's houses. Corner lot estate home worth $740,000 of granite and entitlement. Bryneth sold luxury real estate. Her commission checks depended on Pinehurst's premium reputation. Infrastructure problems? Property value kryptonite. My first mistake? Giving a damn about neighbors. I measured flow rates, calculated 40% capacity shortfall, submitted professional engineering assessment. Photos, drawings, flood projections, the full nerd package. Neighbor helping neighbor, right? Wrong. Bryneth's email. We appreciate concerns, but Sunset Vista assured us everything meets code. Translation. Shut up, you're hurting my sales. Board meeting? She cut me off at 2 minutes. We don't need doom and gloom scaring buyers. Her laugh sounded like silverware in a blender. That's when reality hit. This wasn't about engineering. This was about money. Mother Nature delivered the first lesson during a moderate thunderstorm. My basement flooded. 4 neighbors got hit too. I documented everything. Water levels, backup patterns, system failure timeline. Bryneth's response? $150 fine for unapproved modifications because I'd installed French drainage on my own property. Let me school you on HOA dynamics. They're designed to crush individual resistance. Most neighbors went silent, terrified of retaliation, property values, whatever. But those dehumidifiers running 24/7? Everyone had moisture problems. Nobody wanted to admit it. Exception, Tabitha Reeves, retired city planner who'd seen this dance before. Developer cuts corners, HOA covers ass, residents get screwed. The sound that kept me awake? Storm drains backing up every rain, wet, choking gurgles of dying infrastructure. I'd heard it during hurricane response in Louisiana. I knew what was coming. Meanwhile, Bryneth's listings bragged about superior drainage and flood protection. Any admission of problems would nuke her business model faster than a sewage geyser. She had financial incentive to ignore engineering reality. Not incompetence, calculated negligence. Here's a knowledge nugget about HOA liability. Board members can be held personally responsible for known safety hazards they ignore. Most HOAs don't tell you that little detail. The crazy part? Bryneth was setting herself up for personal bankruptcy while thinking she was protecting property values. I tried one more time, submitted detailed flood risk analysis with photos of system inadequacies. begged them to authorize repairs before major storm season. Her response at the next board meeting? Garrett's obsessed with flooding. It's embarrassing for our community image. Then she did something that still pisses me off. Maybe he should move somewhere that appreciates his dramatic personality. Dramatic. Lady, I was trying to save your basement. The room stayed silent. Nobody wanted HOA retaliation. But I caught Tabitha's eye. She knew I was right. Walking out, the crunch of gravel under my feet sounded like grinding teeth. I'd done my professional duty, warned them, documented everything. What happened next? That was on them. But karma has a sense of timing, and storm season was coming. 2 weeks later, Bryneth called an emergency board meeting. Subject: disruptive resident behavior. I should have known something was up when I walked into that community center conference room. She'd brought backup, some pinstriped attorney named Randolph Sterling who looked like he charged by the sneer. We're here to discuss residents who think government experience makes them neighborhood experts, Bryneth announced, staring straight at me. The smell of cheap coffee mixed with her vanilla perfume hit like a chemical weapon. Sterling cleared his throat with the authority of someone billing $400 an hour. The board proposes new bylaws requiring a $500 engineering review fee for drainage complaints. $500 for submitting safety concerns. Furthermore, Bryneth continued harassment could result in legal action. Harassment for doing engineering. That's when I made my second mistake, fighting fair instead of fighting smart. Next morning I hit the county courthouse. You know that musty smell of old records and decades of bureaucratic secrets? That's where truth lives, buried in filing cabinets. Dolores Hutchins, the clerk, had worked there 30 years. Gray hair, kind eyes, zero tolerance for developer bullshit. HOA documents for Pinehurst? She pulled a thick file. Honey, you're not the first asking questions about that place. Flipping through incorporation papers, I found it. Caldwell Premier Properties, Bryneth's company, received $45,000 in marketing consulting fees from Sunset Vista Construction. Payment date? 3 weeks before drainage plans got approved. $45,000 to rubber stamp dangerous infrastructure. This pattern normal? I asked Dolores. She leaned closer, voice dropping. Sugar, I've seen this dance 12 times. Developer pays, corners get cut, residents get screwed. My daddy always said documentation beats litigation, so document everything. While I'm discovering financial corruption, Bryneth was making her next play. That afternoon, my mailbox contained a petition signed by 12 neighbors. We're concerned about negative impact of drainage complaints on property values. Clever. Turn neighbors against me using their biggest fear, money. But I learned something during my Army Corps days. When someone declares war, you don't bring a knife to a gunfight. I filed Freedom of Information requests for all HOA financial records, public board, public money, public information. Then hired Dana Holbrook, an environmental attorney who ate construction defect cases for breakfast. Dana spread my engineering reports across her desk like battle plans. This is prosecutorial gold, technical documentation, dated warnings, ignored safety concerns. What's our strategy? Patience. Let them dig while we build the case. I started an anonymous blog, Pinehurst Engineering Reality Check. Posted photos, calculations, flood projections. No names, just facts and physics. The response surprised me. Neighbors messaging anonymously, sharing flood stories they'd been too scared to report. Half the development had basement moisture issues nobody wanted to admit. The crunch of gravel under my feet during evening walks sounded different now, like grinding teeth. Every step reminded me of the grinding bureaucracy trying to silence engineering truth. Bryneth's counterattack came fast. Certified letter demanding removal of my unapproved monitoring equipment, rain gauges on my own property, threatened $300 daily fines for aesthetic violations. Sterling followed with restraining order threats over my blog, harassment activities, and defamation. Here's what they missed. I was documenting everything. Every threat, every fine, every attempt to silence legitimate safety concerns. Courts love technical evidence more than angry testimonials. The next rain event proved my point. 3 more basements flooded. Insurance companies started asking uncomfortable questions. My phone buzzed constantly with anonymous neighbor texts sharing flood experiences. Then Bryneth made her crucial mistake. She organized coffee and concerns gatherings, spreading anti-Garrett propaganda. "He's making everyone paranoid about flooding," she told neighbors. "His obsession hurts property values." But Tabitha attended those meetings, and retired city planners remember everything. "Bryneth," Tabitha asked sweetly, "didn't Sunset Vista guarantee adequate drainage?" "Of course they did." "So you have their engineering certifications?" Pause. Nervous laugh that sounded like glass breaking. "We trusted their expertise." That pause told me everything. She knew the system was inadequate from day one. Dana's investigation revealed the bigger picture. Sunset Vista had pending bankruptcy, multiple construction defect lawsuits. If they dissolved, homeowners lost all recourse for repairs. Bryneth had signed off on final construction knowing about bankruptcy risk. Storm season approached. National Weather Service issued severe weather warnings. My models predicted catastrophic failure during major rain events. Bryneth dismissed warnings as fear-mongering supporting Garrett's agenda. Her agenda was protecting property values. Mine was protecting neighbors. The texture of those engineering reports under my fingers felt like armor, documentation that would either save this neighborhood or prove I'd tried. One of us was about to be very, very wrong. Sterling and Associates wasn't messing around. 3 days later, I got served with an expanded lawsuit demanding $75,000 in damages from my interference with HOA governance. $75,000 for submitting engineering reports. The lawsuit claimed I was defaming board members through my technical blog and demanded an injunction preventing any public discussion of drainage concerns. They wanted me silenced, broke, and gone. Bryneth leaked the lawsuit to the local paper. The headline: "Disgruntled resident harasses HOA leadership." Chuh, made me sound like some unhinged ex-government employee with a grudge, but she was just getting started. Next came private security. Meridian Protection Services started community safety patrols, black SUVs crawling through the neighborhood photographing anyone who visited my house. The guards wore tactical vests that screamed, "We're definitely not compensating for anything." Bryneth organized community unity events, carefully excluding families who'd supported my drainage concerns. Wine and cheese gatherings where she poisoned wells faster than contaminated groundwater. Her mass email was masterful manipulation. Be aware that supporting disruptive activities could expose you to legal liability. Protect your investment by protecting community harmony. Translation: help Garrett get sued. The sound of security vehicles crunching slowly past became our new soundtrack. Deliberate, intimidating, expensive as hell. While Bryneth played psychological warfare, Dana was playing chess. Her investigation hit jackpot. Sunset Vista's bankruptcy filing listed Pinehurst's drainage as known defective construction. The company was dumping liability on the HOA before dissolving. Bryneth had signed those transfer documents without board vote or resident notification. If the HOA accepted full liability, residents faced $2.3 million special assessment for system replacement. She was bankrupting the entire neighborhood to cover developer ass. She signed away everyone's financial future, Dana explained, her coffee cup rattling against the saucer from excitement. Personal liability for board misconduct doesn't get clearer. Then something beautiful happened. Professor Quentin Fairbanks moved into the neighborhood, retired hydrology expert from State University. Took one walk around our storm drains, shook his head, and declared them textbook examples of hydraulic inadequacy designed by someone who clearly failed fluid dynamics. Academic credentials trump HOA politics every time. Professor Fairbanks brought something I lacked: media credibility. When he validated my assessment, it wasn't disgruntled resident anymore. It was expert academic analysis. His wife's pecan pie didn't hurt either. Amazing how sugar builds alliances faster than science. Bryneth's response? Full panic mode. She fast-tracked sales of 3 flood-damaged houses, listing them without disclosing known drainage issues. Federal law requires material defect disclosure. Hiding flood risks violates real estate regulations. Dana's eyes gleamed when I showed her those listings. Real estate fraud is federal territory. She's digging graves with a backhoe. Bryneth pressured the board to approve $450,000 emergency landscaping using HOA reserves. The project was designed to hide drainage problems, not fix them. Cosmetic band-aids over systemic failure. Several homes hit the market as residents fled HOA drama. Bryneth used departures as proof that troublemakers hurt property values. The irony? Her actions tanked values faster than any flood warnings. Tabitha organized secret garage meetings for drainage supporters. That concrete floor stayed cold even during summer heat, like the reception Bryneth's supporters got from Engineering Reality. Professor Fairbanks conducted independent flood assessment using university equipment. His conclusions matched mine within 3% margin. Major storm approached with 5 to 7 inch projections. My models showed complete system failure. Professor confirmed 87% catastrophic flooding probability. Bryneth refused emergency preparations. Instead, she announced spring gala would proceed during storm peak. Community solidarity requires ignoring outside fear tactics. Investigative reporter Jennifer Nakamura started sniffing the corruption angle. Sterling threatened media with interference lawsuits. Journalists don't scare when they smell Pulitzer potential. Dana discovered more irregularities. Reserve fund $180,000 short. Missing money traced to consulting payments for Bryneth's relatives' companies. Landscaping contracts inflated 300% above market. She'd pocketed $67,000 from fraudulent vendor relationships while drainage systems failed. The metallic taste of approaching storms filled my mouth during those final weeks, like lightning before it strikes. Private security increased patrols, preventing panic spreading. But physics doesn't care about guards or legal threats. The storm was coming. My predictions would either prove accurate or destroy my credibility forever. Either way, this neighborhood was about to learn expensive lessons about ignoring engineering reality. The smooth surface of my weather monitoring equipment felt cold under my fingers as I checked final calibrations. Everything was documented, measured, predicted. Now we'd see who understood the real world better, Bryneth's lawyers or Mother Nature's physics. Bryneth went nuclear. Friday morning, I got served with a restraining order. She claimed I'd been stalking and harassing her, complete with falsified incident reports alleging aggressive confrontations at the grocery store, gas station, even the damn post office. 3 board members backed her story, swearing they feared for their safety from the dangerous veteran who understood drainage systems. Because apparently, knowing hydraulic engineering makes you a terrorist threat. Emergency hearing scheduled for the day before major storm. Judge Hamilton Crawford seemed sympathetic to these concerned community leaders facing down a potentially unstable resident. And Sterling sought temporary injunction banning me from HOA property, plus $125,000 bond and psychiatric evaluation. They wanted me locked up, broke, and certified crazy before the storm hit. But Dana came prepared. She presented security camera footage from my house, the store, everywhere Bryneth claimed I'd harassed her. The timestamps told a different story, Bryneth following me, not vice versa. Your Honor, Dana said, sliding photos across the bench, plaintiff appears to be documenting defendant's activities, not the reverse. Professor Fairbanks testified about legitimate flood concerns. Academic credentials carry weight with judges who appreciate expertise over hysteria. Crawford realized he'd almost been played. Dismissed restraining order with prejudice. Bryneth couldn't refile the same bullshit. But she wasn't done trying to destroy me. Bryneth hired crisis management firm Pinnacle Strategic Communications. Social media campaign portrayed me as dangerous extremist whose military background made me unstable and obsessed with disaster scenarios. Facebook ads targeted neighbors. Is your neighbor's flood obsession really about safety or something darker? Flyers warned about unhinged veteran safety threats while claiming Army service made me prone to destructive fantasies. Character assassination, professional, and expensive as hell. Community pressure peaked. Anonymous threats in mailboxes. Stop supporting troublemakers or face consequences. Rental properties got lease violations from management companies, controlled by Bryneth's network. HOA voted $50,000 security increase, militarizing the neighborhood against residents questioning drainage. The texture of threat letters felt different, expensive professional printing. Someone invested heavily in silencing engineering truth. National Weather Service upgraded to severe warning, 6 to 8 inches in 4 hours. My models predicted complete failure within 90 minutes of peak rainfall. Bryneth dismissed warnings as government fear-mongering supporting Garrett's agenda, refused postponing gala despite safety concerns. Community strength requires ignoring outside manipulation. Then Dana discovered something interesting about Bryneth's recent insurance purchases. 3 months ago, she'd bought flood coverage with unusually high limits. Policy specifically covered storm drainage failures, suspicious timing for someone claiming no flood risks. Board members had similar policies. They knew flooding was inevitable, but planned profiting from disaster while residents drowned financially. "She's not just covering up problems," Dana explained over coffee that tasted like vindication. "She's positioning to cash in when they happen." Professor Fairbanks mapped exact failure points, installing remote monitoring disguised as garden decorations. Nobody questions university research projects. Storm rumble mixed with party setup sounds from community center. Bryneth's gala proceeding in basement venue chosen for elegant ambience. Basement during predicted flooding with 75 VIP guests. The irony was chef's kiss perfect. Tabitha's evacuation network included 23 households quietly preparing for disaster. Bryneth refused acknowledging. Amateur radio operators joined communication systems. Emergency teams positioned around perimeter. University students volunteered for professor's research project. Everything documented, monitored, prepared. Bryneth's final overreach. Special assessment demanding $5,000 per household for security upgrades against ongoing terrorism. $5,000 for protection from drainage engineers. Threatened foreclosure against residents unable to pay immediately. Announced city council campaign on strong leadership against extremism. Sharp scent of fresh legal documents filled Dana's office as we prepared responses. Attorney General briefed on timeline. Insurance fraud investigators ready. Emergency court filings prepared for weekend deployment. Friday arrived with gray skies and rising humidity. That electric tension before lightning strikes, literally and figuratively. Bryneth posted defiant social media, laughing at doomsday predictions while celebrating community resilience. Gala prep continued despite weather warnings. Security prevented panic spreaders from disrupting morale. Basement venue filled with expensive evening wear and willful ignorance. Light rain began 3 p.m., matching my projections perfectly. Storm intensity building gradually, creating false confidence among attendees. By 7 p.m., cocktails flowed while water pooled in parking areas. Bryneth's opening remarks celebrated community strength against outside agitation. Professor monitored real-time data from hidden equipment. System stress increasing, but no failure yet. I sipped coffee in my dry kitchen, watching neighbors who'd called me paranoid now dancing above a basement that would soon prove every prediction accurate. The calm before the engineering storm was almost over. Dana's subpoena hit Tuesday morning like a freight train loaded with karma, buried in Sunset Vista's contracts, the smoking gun that flipped everything upside down. Bryneth didn't just pocket $45,000. Total payments reached $127,000 for multiple value engineering modifications, corporate speak for how to screw residents creatively. But here's the nuclear bomb. She'd personally signed off on eliminating the retention pond. Original plans required retention pond plus oversized drains for safe drainage. Bryneth approved removing the pond to squeeze in 4 extra lots. Her company sold them for $580,000 each, pocketing $139,000 in commissions. She literally sold the neighborhood's flood protection for profit. Dana spread contracts across her desk like crime scene evidence. This modification increased flood risk 340% according to original calculations. She knew exactly what she was causing. The math was beautiful in its simplicity. Eliminate safety, create inventory, sell to suckers, bank commissions. Classic fraud with HOA presidential blessing. Legal implications? Thermonuclear. Personal liability for board misconduct, Dana explained, coffee cup rattling from excitement. HOA insurance excludes coverage for financial malfeasance. If flooding occurred, Bryneth faced personal bankruptcy from property damage across 47 homes. Professor Fairbanks calculated $3.2 million in potential claims. She hadn't just hidden problems, she'd created them for money. The insurance fraud was worse. Bryneth's flood policies used false engineering assessments claiming no known drainage deficiencies. Federal charges if companies proved intentional misrepresentation. With my warnings plus professor's analysis, slam dunk prosecution. City Building Department. Bombshell. They'd never received final drainage inspections. Sunset Vista submitted falsified certificates. Bryneth signed acceptance knowing the system was incomplete. Criminal permit fraud territory. I stood reviewing documents on Dana's polished table, the smooth surface reflecting my tired but vindicated face, finally understanding the corruption's complete scope. She's not incompetent, I said. She's a criminal caught by meteorology. Tabitha's recordings provided audio gold, Bryneth acknowledging risks while prioritizing market perception. We can't let engineering concerns hurt values when buyers finally respond to our premium positioning. She knew. She always fucking knew. Everything flipped. I didn't need proving future flooding. I could prove past criminal negligence for profit. Focus shifted from defending against HOA attacks to protecting community from criminal board president who'd sold their safety. Dana coordinated with Attorney General. Federal investigators briefed on timeline. Municipality opened permit fraud investigation. Legal trap set. Storm would trigger it. Professor Fairbanks designed educational flooding. Natural system failure with safety protocols and maximum documentation. Prove negligence without endangering lives. Engineering beauty, he said, adjusting monitoring equipment. Is physics always wins? Bryneth's betting against gravity and fluid dynamics. That's like challenging math to a fight. The power dynamic had completely reversed. Instead of paranoid troublemaker, I was now the guy with evidence of federal crimes. Instead of respected community leader, Bryneth was now criminal facing bankruptcy. Thursday evening brought first vindication drops. Storm clouds gathering exactly as predicted while gala prep continued in basement venue. Her entire empire built on concealing infrastructure fraud was about to meet immutable hydraulic laws. Standing at kitchen window, watching raindrops hit dry pavement, I felt oddly peaceful. That sharp ozone scent before storms mixed with deep satisfaction, finally knowing my real enemy. Not incompetent HOA president. Criminal who'd sold neighborhood flood protection and was about to discover that physics doesn't negotiate plea bargains. The storm approaching wasn't just weather. It was justice with a meteorological degree. The master plan crystallized over 48 hours like a perfectly engineered revenge fantasy. Professor Fairbanks and I mapped controlled educational flooding, let nature prove our warnings while keeping everyone safe. The storm would do the work. We'd document the hell out of it. Think physics demonstration, Professor explained, adjusting university equipment. We're not causing anything, just measuring what Bryneth's greed set in motion. Here's what I learned during Army Corps days. Storm drainage works like giant bathtubs with multiple drains. Main outlet gets overwhelmed, water backs up into the neighborhood bathtub. Bryneth eliminated the safety overflow, retention pond, to build more houses. Simple physics beats complex corruption every time. When 6+ inches hit in 4 hours, undersized system would fail exactly as designed. Physics doesn't negotiate with property values. Dana coordinated legal blitzkrieg, emergency injunction, personal liability lawsuit, criminal referral. Documents prepared for immediate filing once flooding proved negligence. Federal fraud charges ready if she files false claims. Dana organized papers like battle plans. Attorney General briefed. Media contacts prepared for maximum impact. Timing was surgical precision. Storm peak, Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Gala scheduled 6 p.m. to midnight in basement venue. Mayor, city council, business leaders attending. Perfect witness pool for infrastructure failure demonstration. Tabitha's Emergency Preparedness Committee secretly coordinated safety. 23 vulnerable households assigned evacuation buddies. Elderly moved to upper floors. Basement apartments quietly evacuated under visiting relatives cover. Professor students volunteered for flood research. Academic cover for emergency response. Amateur radio network activated. Fire department allies positioned for rapid response. Beautiful simplicity. We didn't need causing anything. Bryneth's criminal negligence loaded the gun. We'd just let her pull the trigger. Documentation had to be bulletproof. Multiple camera angles for flooding timeline. Weather monitoring with national service contacts. Water sensors disguised as garden decorations throughout neighborhood. Jennifer Nakamura positioned for live disaster coverage. Preventable flooding exposes corruption, story ready. Social media plan using neighbors' teenagers. They love filming disasters for TikTok. Professor's garage resembled mission control for hydraulic warfare. Monitors displaying real-time precipitation, flow rates, capacity. His wife joked he'd created NASA for neighborhood drama. Financial pressure points were devastating. Insurance investigators pre-contacted about fraud. Property damage contractors on standby. Real estate analysis showing Bryneth's business collapse when fraud exposed. HOA dissolution paperwork ready. Nuclear option to escape criminal control. Safety protocols were ironclad. Basement flooding limited to property damage only. Evacuation triggers based on measurements. Emergency medical through paramedic contacts. No structural damage, just expensive engineering lesson. I established perfect alibi at County Emergency Center during storm. Legitimate duty coordinating flood response across jurisdictions. Professional obligation tracking weather while maintaining innocence. The psychological element was chef's kiss perfect. Bryneth's overconfidence would destroy her. Dismissed every warning, refused preparations, scheduled major event during predicted disaster. Her guest list included every decision maker for drainage repairs, mayor, council, business leaders. They'd witnessed negligence consequences firsthand. Dana prepared counteroffensive. Technical explanations in simple terms. Photography coordinates established. Expert testimony from professor about predictable failure. Community protection expanded organically. Word spread through Tabitha's network. Neighbors coincidentally scheduled weekend trips. Basement valuables moved for spring cleaning. Emergency supplies distributed as normal activities. Generator loans for camping. Bottled water for emergency kits. Sump pumps borrowed for maintenance. County duties provided legitimate weather access, projections, response coordination, perfect position monitoring while maintaining professional distance. Equipment testing felt like tuning precision instrument. Camera angles verified. Communications double-checked. Devices calibrated for accurate documentation. The metallic taste of anticipation filled my mouth during final preparations, like storm air before lightning, literally and figuratively. Friday morning, gray skies, rising humidity. Bryneth posted confident social media about weather-proof leadership while setting elegant destruction in basement. Final legal documents felt smooth under fingers, everything prepared for immediate deployment once physics proved our case. Storm clouds gathered exactly as predicted. Gala began with champagne and willful ignorance. Emergency teams positioned, media ready for live coverage. Professor monitored first raindrops through sophisticated equipment. System functioning normally, he reported, adjusting his glasses like a mad scientist, until it spectacularly doesn't. The calm before engineering storm was ending. 8 months of warnings, threats, harassment, character assassination were about to meet immutable fluid dynamics laws. Bryneth had bet her criminal empire against basic physics. Physics was about to foreclose. The sharp ozone scent of approaching storms mixed with deep satisfaction. Finally time for Mother Nature to teach some very expensive lessons about respecting municipal engineers. Storm day arrived with Bryneth in full desperation mode. She'd hired private investigator Blackstone Security Solutions to dig up dirt on my military service, looking for PTSD evidence, disciplinary actions, anything to paint me as unstable veteran with flood obsession. The irony? My Army Corps records actually proved flood disaster response expertise in Louisiana hurricanes. Blackstone reported back that I was exactly what he claims to be, a competent engineer who knew his shit. Her paranoia was proving my credibility instead of destroying it. Meanwhile, Sterling and Associates escalated to $200,000 lawsuit demands. Filed motion for emergency seizure of my monitoring equipment as evidence of harassment. Sought court order requiring psychiatric evaluation before I could attend any more meetings. They wanted me locked up, broke, and certified crazy before the storm hit. Community intimidation reached military levels. Meridian Protection ran 24/7 surveillance, photographing anyone visiting problem residents. HOA sent certified letters threatening liens for supporting anti-community activities. Bryneth's real estate team flooded neighborhood with market analysis, showing property value decline from extremist resident behavior. Classic gaslighting, blaming me for problems she'd created. But here's what she missed. I was working legitimate county emergency duties during the storm. Professional obligation to coordinate flood response across multiple jurisdictions while documenting everything. Perfect cover for monitoring our neighborhood while maintaining complete innocence. The financial pressure campaign was vicious. Special assessment requiring $4,500 immediate payment from each household for emergency security upgrades. Money needed for terrorism threat protection caused by my engineering warnings. Several elderly residents considered selling rather than face financial harassment. Bryneth was literally driving out neighbors who couldn't afford fighting her corruption. Weather tension built exactly as predicted. Storm system strengthened to 6 to 8 inches in 4-hour window. My models showed drainage failure at 4.2 inches within 90 minutes. Ironclad certainty. National Weather Service issued flood watches across the region. Professional meteorologists validating my amateur calculations. Bryneth dismissed warnings as government fear-mongering designed to help Garrett's agenda. She'd created this alternate reality where physics was political conspiracy. Media attention intensified as Jennifer Nakamura's investigation revealed similar HOA corruption patterns across neighboring communities. Story angle shifted from neighborhood dispute to systemic developer board fraud. Sterling threatened lawsuits against media for interfering with pending litigation. Lawyers trying to silence journalism about public safety. Always a winning strategy. Community fractures deepened. Residents split between flood believers, secretly preparing evacuation, and property protectors, attending Bryneth's basement gala. The sound of nervous whispers replaced normal neighborhood conversations. People choosing sides in what was about to become very expensive physics lesson. Technical preparation reached completion. All monitoring equipment tested, calibrated, ready for storm documentation. Emergency communications verified with fire department allies. Evacuation triggers established based on real-time measurements. Bryneth's overconfidence peaked dangerously. She announced gala would prove community strength against fearmongers, invited additional media to cover successful leadership, claimed advanced ticket sales demonstrated resident confidence in HOA management. The woman was literally scheduling her public destruction. Legal positioning was surgical. Dana coordinated with State Attorney General for immediate response. Federal insurance fraud investigators briefed on evidence timeline. Emergency court filings prepared for weekend deployment if necessary. The sharp scent of fresh legal documents mixed with ozone from approaching storms. Everything ready for immediate activation once flooding proved our case. Final community preparations showed how organized resistance beats institutional power. Tabitha's network conducted last coordination meeting. Vulnerable residents moved to safety. Emergency supplies pre-positioned for post-flood assistance. Amateur photographers assigned specific documentation responsibilities. Social media strategy using teenagers who treated disaster coverage like extreme sports. Thursday evening brought first visual confirmation. Gray skies and rising humidity exactly matching weather models. Bryneth posted defiant updates mocking doomsday predictions while decorating for disaster. Private security prevented panic spreaders from disrupting morale. Armed guards protecting willful ignorance from engineering reality. The irony setup was perfect. Bryneth's marketing emphasized weatherproof community center basement venue, chosen for elegant ambiance and exclusive atmosphere, directly in the flood zone. Guest list included every official who could authorize drainage repairs. Perfect audience to witness consequences of their collective negligence. I reported to County Emergency Center Friday morning with legitimate professional duties. Monitor storm systems, coordinate regional response, track dangerous weather patterns. Perfect alibi while directing neighborhood response. The texture of weather monitoring equipment felt familiar under my fingers, like preparing for another disaster response mission, except this time protecting my own community from criminal negligence. Storm clouds gathered exactly as forecast. Gala preparations continued with champagne optimism and basement vulnerability. Professor Fairbanks activated university monitoring equipment, documenting everything for academic analysis and legal evidence. The countdown was ending. 8 months of harassment were about to meet Mother Nature's hydraulic justice system. Bryneth had weaponized HOA power against engineering reality. Reality was about to return fire. Friday afternoon, the calm before the hydraulic storm. Light rain began at 3 p.m., exactly matching my timeline projections. Bryneth posted triumphant social media, laughing at doomsday predictions while celebrating community resilience. See you at tonight's gala. Her confidence was about to get very expensive. Gala preparations continued despite National Weather Service flash flood warnings. Basement community center filled with elegant decorations, expensive catering, and profound denial about basic physics. Private security prevented panic spreaders from disrupting community morale. Armed guards protecting willful ignorance from engineering reality. From County Emergency Center, I coordinated legitimate storm response across multiple jurisdictions while secretly monitoring Pinehurst through professors' equipment. Perfect professional distance with complete situational awareness. Storm intensity built gradually, nature's cruel timing creating false confidence. Initial drainage handled light rainfall normally, validating Bryneth's public statements about superior infrastructure. By 5 p.m., parking lots showed first puddle formation dismissed as normal storm runoff. Guests arrived in expensive evening wear, trusting HOA assurances about basement safety. Community center basement filled with 78 VIP guests, mayor, city council, business leaders, plus Bryneth's real estate clients. Perfect witness pool for infrastructure failure demonstration. Bryneth's opening cocktail remarks celebrated community strength against outside agitation. Champagne toasts while storm drains reached 60% capacity outside. Weather system unexpectedly intensified due to atmospheric convergence, Mother Nature adding dramatic flair to engineering calculations. Rainfall doubled from forecast, reaching critical threshold faster than projected. Professor Fairbanks monitored from hidden university equipment, texting updates. System stress increasing, failure imminent at current precipitation rate. The irony was delicious. Bryneth had chosen basement venue for elegant ambiance and weather protection. Safest place during tornado, death trap during flooding. Emergency services received anonymous tips about potential drainage concerns from sympathetic contacts. Fire department positioned nearby for rapid response when basement became swimming pool. 6:45 p.m., storm drains reached capacity at 4.1 inches rainfall. Water began backing up through neighborhood outlets exactly as engineering models predicted. Gala dinner service proceeded despite increasing water sounds from above. Mayor expressed concerns about parking garage conditions. Bryneth dismissed minor drainage backup as seasonal adjustment. Security prevented guests from panicking about temporary inconvenience. Guards couldn't stop physics, but they sure tried. Professors' monitoring showed point of no return. Main storm outlet completely overwhelmed at 5.3 inches. Water backing up through entire neighborhood network like reverse circulatory system. Basement seepage began through community center foundation walls. First trickle dismissed as condensation from temperature differential. Emergency response activated across region. I coordinated countywide flood management while documenting Pinehurst timeline. Radio chatter filled with reports of neighborhood flooding, professional validation of amateur predictions. Gala guests noticed ankle-deep water in parking garage. Bryneth announced dinner would continue despite minor weather inconvenience. Refused evacuation suggestions from fire department. Her BMW X5 started floating like expensive boat in basement garage. Other luxury vehicles followed. German engineering meeting hydraulic engineering. Community vindication was swift and satisfying. Residents following evacuation plans remained safe in upper floors. Those trusting HOA leadership faced basement flooding and property damage. Jennifer Nakamura broadcast live as disaster unfolded. Preventable flooding devastates neighborhood despite engineering warnings. Perfect media documentation of predictable failure. Social media exploded with flood footage from multiple sources. Teenagers posted TikTok videos of floating cars with captions like, "When HOA ignores engineers," and "Physics doesn't care about your property values." Water reached ankle level in community center basement. Bryneth realized gala venue was flooding exactly as I'd predicted months earlier. Attempted evacuating VIP guests while maintaining everything under control facade. Security couldn't prevent or solve rapidly rising water levels. Professor guided evacuation procedures while capturing scientific timeline documentation. University equipment providing real-time analysis of system failure patterns. Emergency pumps deployed but futile against overwhelmed drainage network. Physics doesn't negotiate with emergency equipment when fundamental infrastructure fails. Basement parking garage completely submerged. Luxury vehicles floating against ceiling tiles like toys in bathtub. Insurance nightmares becoming reality in real time. Bryneth's public meltdown began as basement venue evacuated to main floor. Room full of waterlogged VIP guests demanding immediate explanations for infrastructure failure she'd denied for months. Mayor, city council, and business leaders soaking wet and furious, witnessing consequences of ignoring professional engineering warnings. Media cameras captured everything: floating BMWs, evacuated basement gala, Bryneth's desperate attempts to maintain authority while standing in floodwater. The setup was complete. Perfect storm meeting, perfect planning meeting, perfect documentation of criminal negligence. From emergency center, I coordinated regional response while monitoring neighborhood vindication. Professional duty requiring flood tracking, while personal satisfaction watching physics prove engineering reality. Storm reached peak intensity exactly as forecast. Community center evacuation in progress. basement flooding across neighborhood proving every prediction accurate. The texture of emergency coordination equipment felt familiar under my fingers, like directing disaster response, except this disaster was entirely preventable and absolutely predicted. Bryneth had dismissed engineering warnings as fear-mongering. Fear was about to teach some very expensive lessons about respecting municipal engineers. Saturday morning, Reckoning Day. Community center main floor packed with 78 evacuated gala guests, soaking wet, furious, and demanding answers. Basement parking garage remained completely submerged, luxury vehicles floating like toys in a child's abandoned bathtub. The smell hit first, backed up sewage mixed with expensive perfume and ruined designer clothes. Then the sound, mechanical roar of emergency pumps fighting futile battle against physics. Mayor Henderson stood dripping in his $2,000 tuxedo, pointing at the flooded basement. I want immediate explanations for this infrastructure failure. Bryneth attempted damage control while ankle-deep in proof of her negligence. This was an unprecedented weather event. Bullshit. Professor Fairbanks stepped forward with university credentials and scientific data. This flooding was absolutely predictable and entirely preventable. Jennifer Nakamura broadcast live as drama unfolded. Exclusive coverage as engineering warnings proved devastatingly accurate despite HOA leadership denial. Social media exploded with footage of floating BMWs in evacuated basement venues. Hashtag Pinehurst floods, trending with comments like, "Physics doesn't care about your property values," and "When Karen meets engineering." Bryneth desperately blamed sabotage by me and Professor Fairbanks, pointed to monitoring equipment as proof of tampering. Security guards searched unsuccessfully for evidence of system manipulation, but I arrived with county emergency response documentation and regional flood coordination records. Perfect professional cover with ironclad alibi. The flooding resulted from design inadequacy, not sabotage, I announced, presenting technical evidence to assembled crowd. Storm drainage failure was predicted, documented, and preventable. Professor Fairbanks calmly explained storm system physics to waterlogged audience. Basic hydraulic engineering shows this system would fail at 4.2 inches of rainfall. We received 6.8 inches. The mic drop moment came when Dana arrived with legal documentation. I pulled out original development contracts showing Bryneth's $127,000 in developer kickbacks. You called me paranoid for warning about floods. I call you liable for causing them. Crowd gasped as financial evidence spread across water-damaged tables. Bryneth personally approved eliminating flood protection for profit, $139,000 in commissions from selling unsafe lots. She knew the system was inadequate, I continued, but concealed risks from residents while profiting from dangerous infrastructure. State Attorney General representatives served papers for financial fraud investigation. Federal insurance agents arrived investigating false claims applications. Police detective began criminal inquiry into HOA embezzlement. Bryneth's complete public destruction accelerated rapidly. Attempted fleeing through flooded parking garage, trapped by risen water and surrounding cameras. Process server delivered personal bankruptcy papers on live television. Real estate license suspension notice from state regulatory board. Criminal charges pending for permit fraud and insurance fraud. Vote of no confidence passed 74-4 among flood victims. Only Bryneth's immediate family supported continued leadership. Emergency HOA dissolution motion filed to escape financial mismanagement. City building inspector condemned community center due to structural flood damage. Municipal engineer validated my original drainage assessments and timeline predictions. Jennifer's investigation revealed systematic developer HOA corruption across multiple communities. Bryneth's case became poster child for infrastructure fraud prosecution. Media interviews captured community transformation. Neighbors who'd called me paranoid troublemaker, now seeking engineering advice and flood protection consultation. Garrett tried to save our neighborhood, Tabitha told cameras. We should have listened to someone who actually understood drainage systems. Mayor publicly apologized for city's failure investigating earlier warnings. City Council voted emergency funding for neighborhood infrastructure repairs using federal disaster relief grants. County emergency management praised my accurate flood predictions and professional coordination. Professor Fairbanks appointed to Municipal Advisory Committee for future flood prevention. Bryneth's final humiliation came when insurance companies denied coverage for known defects and board member misconduct. Personal liability for $2.1 million in neighborhood flood damage. Sterling and Associates faced state bar investigation for frivolous lawsuits and abusive process. Meridian Protection Services lost municipal contracts for unprofessional conduct during emergency. Community justice served through systematic legal accountability. HOA board dissolved, emergency city oversight appointed. Bryneth banned from serving on any homeowner boards statewide. Technical vindication was complete. University analysis confirmed my calculations within 3% accuracy. Storm system delivered exactly predicted rainfall intensity and duration. Engineering expertise finally respected instead of dismissed. Military service honored instead of questioned. Professional reputation enhanced by accurate disaster prediction and emergency response. Visual resolution showed transformation. Emergency services coordinating recovery efforts. Neighbors working together on flood cleanup. Professor teaching drainage engineering to local students. The firm handshakes of previously hostile neighbors seeking expertise felt like armor against future HOA corruption. Community united behind infrastructure competence and democratic governance. Media conclusion highlighted systematic change. New state legislation requiring engineering review for HOA infrastructure decisions. Federal task force investigating developer board fraud patterns. From standing water to standing ovation, physics had rendered final verdict on HOA versus engineering reality. Bryneth learned the most expensive possible lesson about challenging municipal engineers who understand fluid dynamics. The sound of properly functioning pumps removing floodwater mixed with satisfied conversations about community resilience and technical competence. Mother Nature had taught democracy, and democracy had passed the test. 6 months later, transformation was complete. Comprehensive storm drainage system finished using $2.8 million federal flood prevention grant. Neighborhood flooding eliminated permanently. Property values recovered and exceeded pre-crisis levels as buyers specifically sought Pinehurst model, flood-protected communities. The smell of fresh concrete and properly functioning infrastructure replaced backed-up sewage. Sound of efficiently draining stormwater after heavy rains became neighborhood's new soundtrack. Bryneth's complete downfall served justice with mathematical precision. Personal bankruptcy filed after flood damage lawsuits and legal fees. Real estate license permanently revoked for fraudulent property disclosures. Federal court sentenced her to 18 months for insurance fraud. Divorced, relocated out of state, barred from HOA governance nationwide. Her white BMW, once symbol of entitled authority, sold at bankruptcy auction for flood damage. Sterling and Associates faced state bar sanctions for lawsuit abuse. Several partners left firm after reputation destruction. Meridian Protection Services lost municipal contracts for emergency response failures. Legal justice extended beyond individual accountability. State legislature passed Pinehurst law requiring professional engineering review for all HOA infrastructure decisions. Municipal oversight prevents future board corruption through technical competency requirements. Tabitha won HOA president election on transparency and expertise platform. Professor Fairbanks established university partnership for neighborhood sustainability research. Annual flood preparedness training became community tradition and regional model. My personal healing accelerated through constructive purpose. Engineering expertise now respected, military service honored, professional reputation enhanced by accurate predictions and emergency coordination. Dating Jennifer Nakamura, relationship built on shared pursuit of truth and justice. Her investigative series on HOA corruption won state journalism awards and inspired federal reform legislation. Renovated my basement into neighborhood emergency coordination center and technical library. Became go-to resource for residents facing infrastructure challenges and HOA disputes. The positive social initiative exceeded expectations. Pinehurst Engineering Education Foundation, established with lawsuit settlement funds, provides scholarships for infrastructure and environmental engineering students. Annual Symposium. Community Resilience and Democratic Governance draws participants nationwide. Partnership with State University Extension Program offers continuing education in HOA, financial oversight, and technical decision-making. Regional impact multiplied organically. 12 municipalities adopted Pinehurst oversight model. State Attorney General created dedicated HOA fraud investigation unit. Federal Emergency Management designated us Model Resilient Community. My consulting expanded to communities facing similar challenges. Professors' research published in academic journals, case study featured in engineering ethics textbooks and municipal management courses. Practical knowledge sharing became community priority. Residents learned reading engineering reports, understanding budget documents, recognizing infrastructure warning signs. Homeowner's Guide to HOA Oversight became regional bestseller. Technical education workshops teach neighbors assessing drainage adequacy, documenting problems effectively, understanding legal rights regarding governance and maintenance. Knowledge prevents future exploitation by board corruption. Community festivals celebrating resilience and education draws visitors from neighboring towns. Features emergency preparedness training, infrastructure education, and neighborhood pride activities. Children know me as Mr. Garrett, who saved our houses from flooding. Original flood victims became strongest supporters and advocates. Military trauma healed through respected community leadership. National recognition validated approach. American Society of Civil Engineers Award for Public Service, featured in documentary about grassroots infrastructure advocacy, congressional testimony about HOA reform necessity. The texture of basement walls, smooth and permanently dry, reminds me daily of victory over willful ignorance and criminal negligence. Where sewage once backed up, neighbors now gather for community planning meetings. Property values stabilized at premium levels due to proven flood protection and democratic leadership. Waiting list for homes as buyers seek Pinehurst standard governance and infrastructure quality. Future story already developing. Coastal community with failing seawall contacted me about hurricane vulnerability. Another HOA board ignoring engineering warnings about storm surge risks. Jennifer's investigating financial connections between board members and marine construction contractors. Professor Fairbanks packing storm monitoring equipment for new challenge. But that's another story about ordinary people refusing to accept authority figures who ignore technical truth and community safety.
And that's how Garrett went from paranoid troublemaker to neighborhood hero. 6 months later, the same people who called him dramatic was asking for his engineering advice. Nothing changes minds like a few million gallons of sewage in your payments. Here's what this story really taught me. Sometimes the person everyone calls difficult is just the only one paying attention to reality. Garrett could have moved away after the first $300 fine. Instead, he did something most of us wouldn't have the patience for. He documented everything and let physics make his argument. Britney thought she could intimidate an engineer with lawyers and security guards, but natural laws don't negotiate. When you build your empire on ignoring basic science, gravity always collects its dirt. How many of you have dealt with someone in authority who ignores expert advice because it's inconvenience? Drop a comment and tell me about your worst "I told you so" moment. I read every single one. And if you enjoy watching entitled Authority Gets Humbled by Physics, subscribe for more HOA karma. Next week, an HOA tried to ban veteran flagpole and learn why you never underestimate someone who knows military regulation. Remember, equity beats arrogance every time.